Donald Trump is in a full-blown panicked meltdown right now because everyone in the country understands how bad his big ugly bill is, including those in his own party. And they're making it pretty clear how upset they are because Republicans are still holding out and voting no against Donald Trump's budget. And now he has turned to attacking them. Yes, attacking Republican members of Congress as he freaks out on Truth Social during this terrible night. We're going to get into it all and an interview with Democratic Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting the work that we're doing on this channel. Now, before we can get into Donald Trump's crazy freak out and attack on his own party, I want to start with Lawrence O'Donnell, who broke down the reason that Republicans are freaking out right now.
One of the Republicans who has been objecting to the Medicaid cuts from the start insisted today, after completely giving up all of his objections to the bill, quote, "We're not a bunch of little bitches." Okay, no one said you were. I mean, we've said negative things about what you're voting for and what you're willing to do. And many of us have said negative things about the cruelty that you're willing to inflict on people here and around the world. But little bitches is your term, Congressman Derek Van Orden, not mine. Here is the full context of Derek Van Orden's breathtakingly pathetic little bitches self-defense. The President of the United States didn't give us an assignment. We're not a bunch of little bitches around here, okay? I'm a member of Congress. I represent almost 800,000 Wisconsinites. Okay, but every member of the House of Representatives represents approximately the same number of people. That's the idea of proportional representation, and it always has been. Congressman Van Orden does represent exactly one billionaire. Exactly one of those 800,000 people residing in his Wisconsin district is a billionaire. And that is the one person who has absolutely nothing to complain about in this legislation, because Republicans have taken care of billionaires in this legislation as if they are an endangered species. In the United States Senate, Democrats offered an amendment to the bill that would have made the income tax on incomes only over $10 million exactly what that income tax was under President Clinton and under President Obama, 39.6%, 2.5% higher than it will be under the Trump tax cuts. Donald Trump's going to give them a tax rate of 37%. And the Democrats said, how about 2.5% higher just for incomes over $10 million. The Democrats gave the Republicans in the Senate an opportunity to preserve every single tax cut in the bill in one vote, except for incomes over $10 million. The Democratic amendment would have restored the income tax on income over $10 million to 39.6%, which is exactly what it was for every year of the Clinton presidency when those billionaires were on their way to becoming billionaires, because the economy was booming every single year of the Clinton presidency, and they were getting richer and richer every single day of the Clinton presidency with a 39.6 income tax rate on their income. Even though in those days, in the 1990s, they paid 2.5% more income tax than they will under Donald Trump. And Republicans in the Senate fought that amendment in the Senate. And they sent that bill back to the House of Representatives with that full guaranteed protection for every single dollar of income over $10 million.
We talk about this a lot on the channel, but Republicans like to fancy themselves big, tough guys. They're so strong and macho, even though they always been to Donald Trump or always been to the billionaires that fund their campaign. These are not free-thinking, independent people, paving their own way. No. They're always going to fall in line, and that is why it is such a shock that we are actually seeing Republicans stand up to and humiliate Donald Trump. And there's nothing he hates more than being humiliated, which is why he was melting down and attacking and threatening members of his own party on Truth Social right here. Trump wrote, "For Republicans, this should be an easy yes vote. Ridiculous." Also writing, "Largest tax cuts in history in a booming economy versus biggest tax increase in history in a failed economy. What are the Republicans waiting for? What are you trying to prove? MAGA is not happy, and it's costing you votes." This will likely be the bill that blooms 1,000 primaries, where Donald Trump is going to send the most insane Republicans across the country to primary his own members of Congress that support him. Maybe they're pushing back a little bit on this bill, but they're still his cultists. And it's really funny that in a moment in which Donald Trump has made the Republican Party maybe more unpopular than ever, he's going to double down on that and make it even more difficult for them to win elections with insane Trump loyalists being put in place and potentially winnable districts for Republicans as we approach midterms that'll just be decimating them across the country. He's really just doing all he can to undermine his own party. And in that moment, we have to be delivering this message all of the time, how Donald Trump has betrayed you and screwed you over. And I talked about that with Congresswoman Laura Underwood in an interview that I want you to check out right here. Congresswoman, your Republican colleagues have been, of course, lying about their cuts to Medicaid, but it doesn't stop there with the attack on our healthcare system. We know how many people will lose their healthcare, but even for people who are privately insured, what are the effects that are going to go out and just affect everyone in America because of this bad bill?
Well, I think folks should remember that we are in a healthcare system. So when you go to your local hospital, there are folks there who have no insurance, who have Medicaid, who have employer-based insurance or other private insurance that may be good or not, right? And they have Medicare. And there's all these different plans that come together that sustain that hospital. And so when you take away that Medicaid payment, that means that the folks who have Medicaid coverage either are not going to get care and they're going to be even sicker and it's going to be more expensive to pay for that care when they do come in, or they'll come in and then it's what they call uncompensated. And so then it's either never paid for or they're counting on donations from generous members of the community to pay for that health care. Either way, folks will expect the costs to go up. Because if there's uncompensated care, health systems raise the prices for procedures, for doctor visits, and it means that your premiums will also go up. Because oftentimes, as consumers who have healthcare coverage, we're not paying the full true cost of any service, right? That health insurance company is also paying a portion of it. And so we then pay it in the premium. Is that too technical?
I think this is the explanation that we need, because we know, like, we see the raw numbers.
Yes.
But sometimes I feel like, especially in the news cycle that is like the news hurricane that is Donald Trump, I just feel like when we look at numbers versus the personal stories, those are so much more impactful. And that's kind of what we're going to start seeing.
Yes.
What was it in the bill that allowed, mothers as they're in the hospital potentially to lose their Medicaid that we're seeing? It's just an effort to make sure Jeff Bezos can afford a tacky $50 million wedding. Like, it's just embarrassing. And then you have, colleagues of yours who are maybe in some opposition to the bill, but are kind of wishy-washy, maybe folding. None of this is strong. I feel like that's how Republicans like to try to project themselves under Donald Trump as strength. It's really just cruelty. How do we be the foil to that cruelty and actually project strength, not just in the opposition, but what we plan to do after this? Because it doesn't just stop with opposing the bill.
Right.
We got to fix the shit after.
Right. So, like, on this healthcare question, right, these guys, being the Republicans, are going to pass this bill, and either the hospital will close or the nursing home will close, or so many people in your community are going to be kicked off their coverage that your community is going to be sicker and more people are going to die. That's what's going to happen. Our vision is that everyone has healthcare. And that healthcare is actually affordable, meaning that you can...
accessible.
Yes. So you can get a plan for $10 or less a month, right? Thanks to tax credits that I wrote that have lowered the uninsured rate to the lowest level in U.S. history. And now all those folks are going to see their costs rise or their care get cut off, right? That's in this bill.
Yeah.
The removal of those ACA tax credits. So that's what we believe. You should be able to afford your healthcare. You should be able to, if you're diabetic, you should be able to get insulin. $35 a month, or let's just make it free. I have a bill that would make it free.
I think that's just a better idea.
Let's just make it free.
It seems like,
Okay.
Again, like the answer that Trump and Mike Johnson give when they're talking about the deficit. They say that we're going to see explosive growth in the economy. We'll have a broader tax base. GDP is going to rise. That'll take care of it all. But how is that going to happen when people can't get to work because they're sick, or they can't feed their kids? You know, the number one predictor of whether or not a kid's going to have success in school, especially in elementary school and middle school, is if they have breakfast or lunch that day.
That's right.
So like, what type of, I don't want to talk about like the view of the workforce, but like that's what they're talking about. Like, what type of country are we building that can grow and succeed when people don't have access to their basic needs being met?
Well, I think we call that magical thinking where I'm from. And I don't know if you believe that unicorns are real, or that there's, a pot of gold on the other side of a rainbow. But we operate in the real world.
Yeah.
And in the real world, these guys don't have a track record of success. You can go back to Ronald Reagan and Reaganomics and this trickle down that doesn't work for people.
Don't get me started.
It doesn't work. And so, they will say what they say all kinds of things. They say things like their constituents will get over it, or we're all gonna die anyways, right? That's also what they say in the same breath. Joni Ernst, Mitch McConnell.
It's crazy.
Mike Johnson, Donald Trump, right? They are not credible voices. And I don't feel safer. I don't feel healthier. I certainly don't feel more free.
No.
When we talk about freedom and Independence Day, right?
It's an imposition on us.
That's right. This is in no way a positive bill for working families in this country. This tax scam will harm families unequivocally. And there's no amount of rhetoric that can paper over that.
No, completely. And, we see the right has like co-opted so much of the language around making government work, or what's wrong with government is how they like to frame it over the past couple of years. They want to talk about efficiency, but their idea of efficiency, let's talk about it with Medicaid, because you got the specifics on this. They're saying that they're making Medicaid, we're going to make it more efficient. We're going to fix it. But actually, they're just giving people more paperwork, right? Isn't that kind of part of this plan to kick people off their insurance?
That's part of it. That's not the whole thing. So what they're trying to say is that Medicaid is a bloated program filled with 30-year-olds who sit in their parents' basement and play video games all day, who are a drain on society, who are able-bodied and capable of working, but choose not to live a life of leisure and be supported by the taxpayers. That's the narrative that they want you to believe.
Sounds like Elon, actually.
Okay.
But not good at playing those video games. Just mooching off the taxpayer and hanging out kind of sounds like him, but please continue.
Instead, the Medicaid program is actually a program that covers half of all kids in this country. Children.
Yep.
Children are not waste. Children are not fraud. Nope. Children are not abused. Children are not inefficient. Children need health care. Yep. They need to be able to do their sports physicals. They need to be able to get their immunizations. They need to be able to deal with all those crazy viruses and infections, and they have that nasty cough when they go to daycare, like all that stuff. Like these kids need to have their health care. They need to be able to stay on grade level and their little brains can grow and expand, right? Like kids need to have health care. That's Medicaid. Medicaid are seniors. Seniors in assisted living, seniors in nursing homes who maybe one partner has passed and now they're in end-of-life care, and this is how they are able to survive, is their Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid are working families, people who go to work every day, and they might have a couple minimum wage jobs, and they're trying to make ends meet, and they need to be able to have affordable health care.
Yeah.
That is the Medicaid program. And these folks are not a drain on our society.
No. And anyone who views them as such, like it's a politics of cruelty.
Yes.
And it's very petty. And that's why I think so much about we've been talking so much about our Democratic brand going forward. I feel like so much of it has to be like, what's our aspirational vision? Like it's a very sad and angry vision that the right has, and they pretend that it's strength. Again, it's really cruelty. Like we got to come out of this with the aspirational vision, and even in the moments when we're talking about opposition, we have to be able to say, well, this is what's next. Do you feel like When you're speaking to folks in your district,
Yeah.
they see that we can get out of this. Like, what are the tenor of those conversations, especially in this moment?
In this moment, I think folks want to know that we care about them.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah.
I know how hard you're working. I know that this system feels completely rigged against you being successful or getting ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And you are absolutely right that we all should have health care, that rent should be affordable, that we should be able to buy a house and stay in the community that we choose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We should be able to, pay our bills and make ends meet and maybe even go on a vacation with our kids. That our one job should be able to allow for all of that.
In the wealthiest nation in the world, you would think maybe we could make that happen.
That's right. And, that we're not out here doing the bidding of the billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not the ones that are most important.
And they're also just so embarrassing, right? It's like, how are you going to have a $50 million wedding and it look that bad? I don't know. I don't want to keep coming back to the Bezos wedding.
This is what I want you to understand.
Please,
just because
take your
you're
moment.
rich doesn't mean that you have good taste.
Please tell them. Do you know what is good taste, though? Because we were
What?
talking about this right before. The color of the blue. We were talking about this.
Jack.
The color of this blue. That's,
You
could plan a $50 million. You probably wouldn't want a $50 million wedding.
No.
But if you did,
No.
it would be classy, Jeff Bezos.
You know
It would
what?
have some substance to it.
Everyone deserves a little love in their life.
Even Jeff.
Everyone. Everyone deserves a little love in their life. But I don't know that the taxpayers
To be the one.
need to be underwriting a wedding.
No, I agree.
That's just me.
And I just feel like there's no other way that we could close besides that, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for the time.
Good to see you.